Hi guys, Ash here and welcome to the first video in this new channel which is going to be aimed at slightly less experienced pilots, beginners, people looking to progress from smaller single engine prop aircraft up to airliners and instrument flying and flying real world procedures. A bit of VATSIM as well because I fly on VATSIM, hopefully doing a bit to assist newbies and people who aren't really sure how to get started, and that's the aim of the channel. So a couple of disclaimers and sort of get the boring bits out of the way. First of all, there's probably a few of you who may well tune in and go, well, you know what, this isn't really for me. That's absolutely fine. This is aimed at people who are starting out or people who are sort of less experienced and looking to progress. I am a real world PPL. I'm not a commercially rated pilot. I've got a few thousand hours in the sim, and of those about 1,000 hours on VATSIM as well. So I sort of know what I'm doing, and I get by pretty well. So I'm just going to try and pass on a bit of what I've learned to hopefully help people get started and get a foot in the door. This first little video is just going to be just doing two things really. Firstly, if there's any issues or comments that you need to make about the sound and all that sort of stuff, you can leave the comments and let me know, and I'll do my best to fix it before we get into the more sort of serious procedural stuff. Firstly, I just want to talk a bit about the setup, about the the additional bits and pieces that I sort of can't live without in flight planning and making the stuff happen. Before you even get into the sim, all the additional flight planning and weather stuff and bits and pieces like that. So we're on the ground here now at Melbourne. We've just come in from Sydney as Velocity 882, full VATSIM flight with control from Sydney all the way down. And I just want to sort of share with you how I go about making it happen, all the planning stages and the various other bits on top of the actual sim itself that go into making it work. First things first, you need a PC that can run it. This is by no means going to be a how to tweak your sim and what system is best for flight simming. That's been done to death. There's plenty of advice out there. The only thing I will say is every system is different, and what works for one person may not work for somebody else. It takes time to find the best settings for your system. Until X-Plane goes over to Vulkan and starts utilising more cores, I don't think Prepared or FSX is ever going to go down that route anyway. So the most important elements to look at are your CPU clock speed and your cooling. Graphics after that, and then the RAM and stuff like that. But let's say this is not a how-to guide on tuning your system for flight sim, so that's it. Just make sure you've got a system that is up to the job and you don't expect more of it than it's capable of, otherwise you'll get frustrated. After that, you need a sim, and I'm going to try and make these videos relevant to everybody, no matter whether you're still on FSX or indeed FS9, whether you're on Prepared, whether you're on X-Plane. Hopefully you should all get something out of it. That is the idea anyway. There'll be some times when it gets a bit product specific. You can see parts up here in front of you, and the Virgin Australia colours is the PMDG 737. Some things applicable to that won't apply to, say, the Zebo mod in X-Plane if you're flying the 737. A lot of it won't apply to the Airbus if you're flying on an A320 or something like that. But I'm going to try and steer clear of anything that's too product specific or procedural, and just give you hints and tips on how to get the best out of your simming experience. With that in mind, I try and do things sort of real world as best as possible, by the book, follow the procedures, follow the real world flight plans and that sort of thing. So the rest of this video, I guess, is going to be aimed at how do I get to that point. I've just landed here at Melbourne following a real world flight. How did I get there? How did I find the call sign? How did I plan it? That's going to be the aim of these sets of videos. I'll just start off this first one, just looking at what I use on top of the simulator, all the bits and pieces that I sort of can't live without now in planning and executing a flight. So obviously, as I said, you got your sim. We're in P3D version 4.2. I think there's a 4.3 is out now, but I haven't updated yet, so that will happen at some point. After that, the next most important thing, especially I find if you're going to be flying online on Flightsim or IVAO or Pilot Edge, is a weather engine, something that will generate real-world weather, get it into the sim, get your winds and your, particularly the winds and the visibility and stuff as accurate as possible. And for me, for P3D, that is Active Sky. I've been using that since it came out for FSX. I'm fairly certain now, someone will correct me if I'm wrong, I'm fairly certain there is a decent live weather engine for X-Plane, for X-Plane 11. And there's certainly Active Sky versions compatible for FSX as well. And you can, of course, go and look at the weather for your departure or arrival airport online. You can just find that on Google anywhere, and you can just go and dial it in manually into the sim. You don't need Active Sky, but it has a whole host of extra features that I just find really useful. And of course, it's a one-stop shop for getting your weather accurate and live, and you don't have to keep thinking about it. With that in mind, I will just go over to Active Sky and bring the control panel over to this monitor. From that, you can obviously gather that I'm using two monitors. I've got the main one set up here for the sim, and then the second one over to the right for all the additional bits and pieces. I'd recommend a multi-monitor setup. It makes things nice and tidy. You don't have to keep tabbing in and out. You can always have your sim in front of you. So yeah, that's where all the other stuff is coming from. So yeah, periodically I'll drag stuff across and dump it back on the other monitor just so you can have a look at it. So this is Active Sky. This is the latest version for P3D version 4. Fine, all sort of makes sense. All the usual stuff you expect to find there. This isn't an Active Sky tutorial, so you can look it up on YouTube if you want to have a more in-depth look at it. I use it in pretty much one mode only. There's a few different ways you can go to custom weather. You can create your own. You can use historical weather, so you can set a date and time in the past and it will call up the weather from then. Or you can just hit live and go to weather mode here and do live as well, either way. Bosh, there you go, it's live. It will track your position wherever you are. It connects to the sim through Simlink. I'm pretty sure it's Simlink. It might have its own, it's an AirSim Connect actually, I think is the process that runs in the background that links the sim to the weather engine. Once that's done, it knows where you are in the world. It will call up the real world weather as best it can, and inject it into the sim, and off you go. When you go to the conditions tab and you type in where you are, so at the moment we're in actually that's a lie because I need the IK for that, which is Yankee Mike White Lima. There we go. There we go, that is the weather at Melbourne. We've got cloudy with showers, we've got temperatures of 10, dew point 5, we've got the wind, we've got the pressure and the precipitation, the visibility all over there, and we've got the altitude layers there. We've got the actual the METAR, the actual report there, decoded, so that's the real world stuff as it's coming from Melbourne at the moment. We've got a TAF, which is an area forecast, which is not decoded there, so if you're not familiar with how to read that, I won't even bore you with that. But yeah, that coding there is a weather forecast, believe it or not. But yeah, that's it. That goes straight into the sim, runs in the background, and you can search the weather for your departure, your arrival, for anywhere en route if you divert. It's great, and it just runs along in the background nicely. It doesn't affect the performance too much, and just injects good real-world weather into your sim. Obviously, you need an internet connection for that, which I imagine most systems would have nowadays. So yeah, that's your weather. Very important, especially if you're on Flightsim. Excuse me. Next thing I find most essential is some form of flight planning. Personally, I mean, there's a few, as I say, with most of the things I'm going to show you, there are a variety of options. For your flight planning, there is PFPX, which is payware. I don't know if it's an app or if it's a browser-based version, but it's certainly payware. You can try and do it yourself through the sim, through the facilities that are default with the sim, and you get all right results. But for me, I use Simbrief. It's browser-based. You create an account and you log in, and it's free. It doesn't get much better than that. And if I bring that across, maximise that. This is the flight I've just done. So yeah, I'm logged in. I have an account, and it's as simple as, again, this isn't going to be a tutorial based on any of these products. It's just showing you what I'm using. But it's as simple as go to new flight, fill in the details. All you need to do, and literally all you need to do, is this section and this section, and it will do the rest for you. That's as in-depth as you need to get with it. You can, of course, manipulate a whole host of other bits and pieces, weights, number of passengers, so on and so forth. But all you need to do is put in, in fact, you don't even need the airline flight number. You can put in your departure. Let's go that way. Let's pop that in quickly, make it Sydney. There you go, you pop in your departure and arrival, it'll go, have a think about that, plan a route, and give you an alternate, tell it the type of aircraft, A340, they're all in there. Pick whatever you want. Mine was 737 today, I came down, and it does the rest. You can analyse the route, it's giving you a route down here, analyse the route, and then you go to your flight plan. It's all there. So again, that's a really concise bit of kit. There's the flight plan, so if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, all the performance and everything is there, all the fuel, all the winds and everything else. It's as close to a real-world flight plan as you're going to get for free, that's for sure. And it's really good. I really like it, and it's free. You can't say fairer than that. The other great feature is a lot of the payware and indeed the freeware aircraft now. You have the route upload function in the FMC. So rather than, if you're planning a, let's say, Emirates from Sydney to Dubai, 14-hour flight with probably 50 waypoints, you don't want to type that in by hand. You can simply use the function here, which if I go move the mouse onto it, it'll probably change. There we go. They've now got an automatic download function, which will download the correct type of flight plan file. So for me it would be the PMDG 737. Pop it in the correct folder for you, and when you go to the aircraft you can load it up and it's there. Really handy. You can also file your flight plan on Pilot Edge or Flightsim if you log in. Oh, wonderful. If you log in down there, and it'll file it straight online for you if you're going online. So I'd really recommend Simbrief. Again, if you want to pay for PFPX, nothing wrong with it. I believe it is slightly more accurate in the fuel planning and stuff like that, but I've never had a problem with this. So yeah, that would be my recommendation. It's browser based, create an account, log in, off you go. Just get rid of you over to there, and the next thing we want to look at is then going to be the charts. I would highly recommend some form of charts, whether it be going onto Google and searching for charts for the particular airport you want, which is perfectly viable. If you're flying, say, for example, in the UK, NATS, National Air Traffic Service website has most of the charts for all the aerodromes that it controls and all the airspace it controls. Air Services Australia have a lot of the charts for the Australian stuff, and they're usually fairly accessible online. I use Navigraph, and there's two reasons for that. One, it's all centrally located in one place, which is either a desktop or an iPad app version. I do run the iPad when I'm flying, so that I can keep it just down to one side and keep it off on a separate screen, so it's always there, and it's touchscreen, which is always handy. And I'll just very quickly find the desktop version, which is over here. Drag that over for you. No, that's definitely active sky. There we go. And there we go. So that is a sectional chart for, well, no, it's an airways chart for the South Australia region, the Melbourne FIR, Flight Information Region. And you can see with the SimLink feature, I'll just turn that off, pop it back on again so you can see it pop up there. That is our position, that is our current position live, and it will track, which is another great feature. That's something that's really handy, especially if you go to the airport side of things. And here we are at Melbourne, and there we are on Gate Echo 7 on Pier Echo, and that is live and updates as you taxi. So if you got your taxi routing, say Alpha to Kilo to 34, you can follow where you're going and make sure you taxi in the right place. Just a really handy function. You know, you don't have to use it, and you can certainly get away with just the paper charts or just finding the charts on Google. But you know, this is really handy. Each airport has the charts broken down into categories. So you reference noise abatement stuff, terminal arrivals, approach procedures for each runway, taxi airport diagrams, any NOTAM stuff, construction works, bits and pieces, and standard instrument departures. They are, as far as I'm concerned, for all the flying I do, they are accurate and up to date enough. There was some debate going on Facebook pages and stuff recently as to whether Navigraph, considering you're paying for it, does have all the charts. Apparently there was some local US airports where there's some procedural charts missing and stuff like that. So yeah, it's up to you. I personally pay for it and I've never had a problem, and I fly pretty much all over the world. So yeah, again, your choice, but I would highly recommend it. It is a multi-function subscription because it also gives you another function as well as the charts, which is the FMS Data Manager. Now, what is the FMS Data Manager, you might ask? It quite obviously manages the FMS data. FMS data is the database of waypoints, airways, departure and arrival procedures, and something that, especially again, if you're going to be flying on VATSIM, or if you want to do it up to date, if you want to do it real world and as accurate as possible, you're going to need to make sure that the database in all your aircraft, whether it's PMDG, FS Labs, whatever it is accurate, because otherwise you might be given an arrival or departure procedure that doesn't exist in your aircraft database. So we'll pop that up very quickly. You can have a look at that. So it's an account based. It's the same as the charts desktop. One subscription fee allows you access to all of the databases specific to each type of aircraft or each type of add-on you've got, so you don't have to pay for each different type. You map the drive that everything is installed to. It tells you what you've got in your add-ons list, and then you can see we're due for an update at the moment. You check to your heart's content and hit update, and it will make sure that your nav database is up to date. You can see, actually I'm due one at the moment. The current cycle is 1808, year 18, month 08. So I'm on 1807, which was the last month's year 18, month 07. That's how it works. One update a month, make sure everything's up together. There's nothing to say that if you've got 3 or 4 months out of date, you're not going to be absolutely fine. But you know, if you're still running on FSX from when you installed it, you might have a database that's 2-3 years out of date, and you can almost guarantee that you'll be missing procedures and waypoints and stuff. So it's worth having, and it really is as simple as that. You just check the ones you want, hit update, and off it goes. With the add-on mapping function, you just scan the drive and it will find everything that's relevant. And the other great feature with that, if you type back to your Simbrief account, you can sync your Navigraph subscription with your Simbrief account, and then when you you have to make sure it's up to date. You have to unlock each cycle, but it comes under the same subscription fee as all the other FMC databases. And then you are planning on Simbrief with the same nav database as you'll be flying within the aircraft. So just make sure everything's synced together nicely. So Navigraph is the one I would highly recommend. It's again totally up to you. It's not absolutely essential, but I would recommend it. So yeah, once you get into the sim, this is the next sort of logical step. You need to be able to get around in the sim, and all the sims have various view manipulation features. Currently, I'm outside the aircraft, so on my yoke, on my little point of view hat, or the little multi-way switch that sits on the yoke, on most throttle and on most yoke and joystick devices that are available out there, there'll be one of these, and this usually defaults to moving the view around. Fine. I leave it like that for the exterior views because I don't really do a lot of exterior shots and stuff like that. I occasionally pop outside if I'm in the cruise and just have a look around, but that does enough for me. For inside the aircraft, however, it is a different matter because you're going to need to be able to access different panels, different areas of the cockpit, especially in a complex aircraft like the 737. You're going to want to get close in on some of the overhead panels or the FMCs and stuff like that. And that is where ChasePlane comes in. I'll bring that up over here and you can have a look. This is the ChasePlane control panel. If you want to get in depth about how ChasePlane works, check out Matt Davies on YouTube. He's got a great ChasePlane video. I'm sure he won't mind me recommending you all go and have a look at it. It does onboard views, it does outside views, so I could use it for the external views as well if I wanted to. It also does static, which I think is locks to positions on the airfield, so you can set tower positions and stuff like that. I only use it for inside. But if we go into the aircraft, there we go. This is where it really comes into its own. You use the camera tab here to set your views, and you do have literally every possible way of manipulating the camera. Once you've got it in a position you want, you save it as a preset, and then you can key map those to the keyboard. Just make sure, like with anything, when it comes, just briefly touch on key mapping. If you're mapping stuff, especially from external programs, to buttons on your keyboard, make sure they're not also mapped to something in the simulator. You don't want to be pressing 1, which is where I have my main view, or 2, which is where I have my MCP view there, or 3, which is FMC. You don't want to be pressing those and ChasePlane moving your view for you, and the sim turning your autopilot off, or increasing your altitude hold, or whatever. Just make sure you free up the key mappings in the sim, in the control section of the sim, before you go mapping other stuff to it. It's always a useful one. So yeah, you can do a whole host of stuff, and as I say, check out Matt Davis's video to get an idea of what ChasePlane can do. But essentially, it's for getting around the aircraft nice and quickly. You can also, if I just get rid of the control panel, if you've got a mouse with a scroll wheel, you can set, probably this one, hasn't that one, there you go. You can set the scroll wheel to zoom. This is all within ChasePlane again, should you need to move it. Now, it can get a bit annoying if you're, I don't do it in these views because I use the mouse wheel to manipulate controls there, and it will zoom at the same time, which is really frustrating. So I've disabled it in that view, but you can disable it preset by preset, which is really handy. Also, if you've got the mouse wheel, you can click it in into the centre. That brings up the ChasePlane quick menu inside the sim, or you press and hold it in and you can scroll around. You can do a free move like that, which is really handy. There are, as I say, other options. You can just use the default. You can probably map some views within the sim. You can use I think EasyDock is still possibly a contender. I think Matt Davies was one of the first people to convert from EasyDock to ChasePlane, and he's been doing it for a while, so he's pretty experienced at that. If he says it's a better version, a better option, I tend to sort of listen to that. But whatever you feel comfortable with. Again, you know, there are other options, but ChasePlane is my go-to for getting around. After that, really, it comes down to personal preference. So, what sort of aircraft are you looking to fly? You may already have the PMDG or one of the Airbuses and not really know sort of how to progress with it. You might have your heart set on a 777, but you don't know really how to get on with it. You might not be sure, so take some time to, you know, there's a lot of different options out there. The world is your oyster in terms of money. Some of the version 4 PMDG packages now are over $100, which is a lot of money for an aircraft. They are very accurate, but it is a lot of money. And as I say, I'm going to try not to make these product specific too much. So, although I'm using the PMDG 737 for most of this, it will hopefully apply to whatever you've chosen to fly. So, you know, hopefully you'll be able to still get something out of it. So after you've chosen your aircraft, there's a couple of other things you can sort of decide whether you want to do or not. Firstly, do you want to model ground services and stuff like that? So GSX is a great one for modelling ground services. You can see we've got the steps there, we've got the baggage belts there, we've got the tug tucked away under there ready to go. That's all GSX ground services. It's a paid add-on. It handles, at the very least, it'll do your pushback for you if your aircraft doesn't have a pushback facility. I know the PMDG does through the FMC menus. As far as I know, it works slightly differently in X-Plane, so that would be better pushback. I think is the plugin for your pushback control in X-Plane, and then I think a lot of the baggage handling type stuff and the ground services come with the individual aircraft or not, depending on whether they're modelled. So it works slightly different for X-Plane, but certainly for FSX and Prepared, it's GSX is a go-to plugin. I don't actually know of an alternative. I may, feel free to correct me in the comments, but I don't know of an alternative to GSX for Prepared or FSX. So up to you. I think I might right in saying I haven't updated or done the latest patch for this one. So yeah, there we go. So Control F12 brings up the menu for that. What it has a habit of doing is bringing up the menu and selecting one of the options in the same button press, which is really frustrating. But there you go, this is the basic thing. So we've deboarded since we've arrived, so you can request catering, refuelling, which normally syncs to the refuelling function of the aircraft itself. You can request boarding, it'll do your pushback and stuff for you. If you've got SOD, Sim Object Display Engine installed, and you've got a SOD programmed scenery, then you can use it to control the jetways as well. The options are there. It's got a menu. I've somehow requested catering. Here it comes. The options are there in the actual menu. Up at the top of on the sim bar, at the top there, menu bar, to customise positions, customise aircraft and stuff like that. So it's all there. I'm just going to try and get the controls and just reset it because I don't want catering to start bugging me. And there we go. So that's a noise. That's the tug engine that was running there, which was actually generating the noise. So if I pop out of the sim now, you'll notice, yeah, that's a fault of the 737. So the sound should still say active when you tab out of the sim into another window. Works fine with the PMDG 777. Doesn't work with the NGX for some reason. There's a menu option in sounds somewhere. Yeah, sounds here. It would be something like play an external view. Yes, but just it doesn't seem to work properly. I don't know why. It's frustrating, but there you go. It doesn't work. So there we go. Let's go back outside. So I am going to keep tabbing in and out, which means the sound will keep coming and going, but unfortunately we'll just have to live with it. So what have we done? We've done GSX. you then need to make a choice. Are you going to be flying on Flightsim or not? Do you want, or IVAO, or whatever the Pilot Edge, the other options? If you do, you need to connect to it somehow, and vPilot is my go-to, which I'll bring over here. FSIN, I think, is another possibility. There's a couple for Flightsim, and IVAO for... In fact, I think IVAO has its own client. I don't know, I've never flown on it. For P3D and FSX. Here comes the rain. I think Xsquawkbox is the only version for X-Plane 11, which means you're limited to that. But again, it's just a client. It's just a way of. It does two things. It connects your SIM to the network you're flying on, both for voice transmission and for your position transmission to your height, speed, and everything else to the ATC that's online, so they can see what you're doing. It also model matches, so you have, again, check this out on YouTube. There's loads of videos about this. A database of aircraft models and liveries, which providing the other people that have connected to whatever network you're on, wherever they are in the world, have put the correct details in their flight plan and in their connection when they've logged in. It will then use that database and the model matching rules that you've set to show you the right type of aircraft in the right livery. That's the basis of the other side of what it does. So it connects you to the network and allows you to talk to air traffic control, and it matches models so that other traffic that appear on the network look right. Again, check it out on YouTube. Loads of tutorials on how to get all that working. I won't bore you with that because it's quite extensive, and there's a lot of setting up rules and making sure you've got the right things downloaded and stuff. But it's not too daunting once it's set up. It just runs away in the background, and it's quite a nice handy little program. I always keep the interface up on the screen because you can also receive text communications as well as voice comms. So that can pop up, and you can just keep that on your second monitor. And so anyone sends you a message, a direct message, or on the open frequency chat log, you can see who's saying what. Some people don't fly with voice; they only fly with text. So it appears on there, and you can see what they're up to, whether they're taking off, landing, or whatever. But yeah, that's vPilot. So that's my go-to for connecting as a client. So yeah, after that you've got choices about how sort of in-depth you want to make the sim. What sceneries do you want to use? I've got the whole Orbex Australia package. So I've got global vector, Orbex Australia, and Melbourne, a few other Aussie airports. I've got England stuff. Yeah, it comes down to how much your system can handle, how much you want to spend, and how in depth you want it to be. I like it to look as real as possible. I don't have a huge spec computer, so I do have to be careful because it does start to impact on the frame rates a bit. Again, just do what, play around with it, have a look out there for different advice. Feel free to ask me, in the comments and stuff, if there's stuff you want to know. But yeah, my setup's alright. It's pretty good. It's not, it's not thousands and thousands of pounds, but it does for me. There's loads of stuff out there scenery wise, so it depends where you want to fly in the world, how much money you want to spend, that sort of stuff. Other things available I've got running at the moment are Rex textures. So if we just come down a little bit, look at the clouds. They're Rex texture clouds. They work in conjunction with Active Sky, so the Active Sky tells it how much cloud and which way it's moving and how height it is and so forth. The actual texture of the clouds is delivered by Rex, so they work in conjunction. Again, you pay for that, but it just makes it that little bit more accurate and realistic. I'm running PTA, which is Matt Davis's prepared tweak assistant. It does things like shaders, which just change the look of the sim. It changes the hues, the reflections, the cloud density. They all work in conjunction to provide slightly different elements. It's 15 quid, I think it was. I'd highly recommend it. There's lots of things you can tweak, or there's people's presets you can download and just stick in. I'm running Matt's default preset that comes with it, and I haven't tweaked it yet. I probably will at some point, but for me it just adds an extra couple of elements to the realism side of it without impacting the frame rate too much, which is fine. Yeah, they're all choices, they're entirely up to you. If you're flying offline and you want traffic, and you don't want to be in the sim on your own, then Ultimate Traffic Live is the one I've got. There are a few out there for different platforms. There's obviously a couple for X-Plane as well, I think, so check those out. Ultimate Traffic Live is great because it does, as accurately as it can do, follow real world ops. So if you're flying in real world time, you should see traffic that's departing at the same time in real world, or as close to as they can keep with their planned database. So it's quite handy for that, and there's lots of controls that you can manipulate in that. But again, Ultimate Traffic Live is the one I'm using. That's something to check out if you're interested. If you're not interested in spending the money, you're not bothered about traffic, fine. Then you don't need to. There's ATC plugins, ATC add-ons as well, which you can do. You can use those for simulated ATC if you're not on Flightsim. Again, check them out. There's a few out there. I don't personally use one because I either fly on Flightsim or I just don't bother with ATC. Up to you, whatever level of realism you want to achieve. I find them all a bit robotic and a bit sort of stagnant, so I prefer, if I'm not flying on Flightsim, not to bother with ATC. That's just personal preference, really. Once you've done that, once you've decided what you want to run, you've got everything installed and running, I'd take a bit of time to do your presets in ChasePlane. And again, just touching back on ChasePlane quickly, one thing I didn't mention is it saves product-specific presets. So you can generate your presets for your 737, fine, it'll save them. It'll recognise what aircraft you're flying, so if you've got different presets for the 777, when you load up a 777, it'll find those, call them up for you, so it's really handy for that. Take a bit of time to do that to make sure you've got your views in ChasePlane set up correctly. Make sure you've got your button mapping set up. Make sure you've got whatever flight controls you're using. I've got ProFlight's yoke and throttle set up. There's loads out there. You can spend a lot of money on them. The ProFlights I find absolutely fine. I've got I was lucky enough to find one of the older ProFlight Cessna ones, which I think is slightly better. Again, personal choice. If you can find one, I'd recommend it. Normally, whatever you find, whatever you decide to use, they'll have a number of buttons and rocker switches and stuff on there, and obviously the axis for pitch roll, the throttle axis for your engines. Just make sure you've got them all set up and mapped properly in the sim, in the controls. There we go. So we got axis assignments. You just make sure. I've got the yoke and the X52, which is joystick for flying the Airbus as a side stick instead of a yoke, just to make it more accurate. Just make sure you've got stuff set up in the controls. Make sure your calibration is correct. Make sure your sensitivities are right. So you just you can calibrate, make sure everything's working correctly. Just make sure you've done all this and get it all set up in advance. You only need to do it once, and once it's running, it should. The profiles are saved in the config file. They load up every time. It just makes sure that the experience. You're not going to be frustrated trying to work out why you can't retract your gear or why you've only got one engine spooling up because you've got two throttles running, and one's assigned to the engine number one and number two is not assigned, or whatever. If you're trying to taxi and your rudder pedals aren't assigned to your nose wheel steering, it's things like that. Just take a bit of time before you especially before you go on Flightsim and you really have a nightmare, just to make sure all the different elements and the different specifics to the aircraft that you're flying. So the PMDG, if I go into the FMC, if you go to the menu, you've got the FMC, which is the actual the data for your flight. And then if I go back to menu, got PMDG setups, aircraft options, loads of different stuff in there. No doubt Aerosoft, FS Labs for the Airbus, Coronado, for your twin turboprops and stuff, will all have similar options specific to their aircraft for you to configure different things. And so, before you get into that and into actually doing a flight, make sure you've got everything configured and set up how you want it, and you sort of know where things are, so it kind of falls to hand. Especially if you're going to be flying on Flightsim. The other last bit of prep that I do with a new aircraft, which I'll show you relative to the PMDG, there will be definitely ways of doing this for other aircraft, whether it's through the FMC or through an external control panel, or however they choose to do it and implement it. There'll be different panel states, so you can load and save the configuration of your aircraft panel and then recall it. So there's bog standard ones that come here. There's a tutorial state, program generated temporary state, whatever that is. There'll be a cold and dark. There'll be a cold and dark. I just clicked on it, the line select key there, and you see the execute lights come up there. Hit execute and it will load panel state. It takes a bit of time to initialise. You can just see that actually it's not going to show you because I've got a slightly wider monitor than what you're seeing, but it's just the little green text banner up there just says initialising systems. It takes a little while to load everything in with a complex aircraft like this, but it's worth doing. So I've generated a turnaround panel state. So if I then go to load panel state, sorry, I'm rushing through these. I will do more specific features in later videos. This is just to show you, the premise of what I'm talking about. So my panel state, I've generated and used the save function, and then I can load that up, and that's how I want it ready to start a flight. Because I don't want to be starting from cold and dark every time, aligning the IRSs, powering up all the various systems. I want to be able to jump in and start popping the route data in and stuff like that straight away. So that's how I have it set up. So that is in the PMDG setup. You set all your switches, you set everything how you want it, all the different bits and pieces, all your radios, all your overhead panel, however you want to find it when you start the aircraft up, and then you just hit save panel state, give it a name, stick it in there, and then hit execute and it'll do it, and then you can call it up every time. So that's really handy. Just find out how to get to your different panel states in whatever aircraft you're flying, because it's really useful for not having to start from cold and dark every time. Okay guys, I think that kind of covers the basic, before you actually get to flying an aircraft, to executing a flight. That covers the basic setup, the different bits and pieces. You can get as in-depth as you want with it. There's a whole host of other add-ons and bits and pieces, scenery stuff. It's up to you. But that is, for me, that's a bare minimum. That is what I need to do the flight. There's no point for me in doing it without that level of setup. As far as the physical setup is concerned, I've got two monitors on the PC. I've got the yoke and the throttle. Also got the iPad running with the charts on, and I've got a laptop which I normally have the flight plan loaded up on there, so it's not on. I don't have to keep calling the browser up on the actual system every time. That's just how I fly. You can do it however you want. You don't have to run the iPad. You don't have to have Simbrief open on a different laptop. That's just the way I prefer to do it, because it keeps things nice and free. Everything's where you want it. You can pretty much see everything you need without having to tab through windows and stuff. So that's how I go. There's a lot, especially with the cockpit side of things. You can really go to town with multiple monitors, with physical external controls. Some of the side-tech panels and stuff you can add on. There's loads of stuff, so the world is your oyster. But for me, that's a bare minimum of stuff that I fly with every time. Moving on from there, I think that is probably plenty for now. But the next video is then going to look at It's still going to be, I'm sorry to bore you with the prep stuff, but probably the next video won't even get into the cockpit. That'll be the flight planning stage, and that side of things. And again, that's a topic worthy of a whole video on its own, depending on how complicated you want to make it. But I certainly try and do it as accurately as possible. So I think the next video will jump into that and show you how I do it and see how we get on. So I hope that's been enlightening for some of you. Feel free, drop comments in the box at the bottom. I'll do what I can. I'm fairly busy with work, but I will do what I can to answer questions and to start targeting topics that people want to see. Yeah, thanks very much, and right on cue, there's the dog, so time to go. Cheers.